Now, we're talking about immense challenges, and no matter how ingenious any technology or how inspired any policy idea coming out of my campus, they just won't work without private sector leaders who can help solve our great shared energy problems, to transform those problems into opportunities. And that's why I'm so pleased to introduce our keynote speaker today, John Doerr. I'm sure all of you know John's fabulous contributions and his history. He's a partner in the legendary Silicon Valley VC firm Kleiner Perkins Caulfield and Byers. He was a crucial backer of such crazy startups as Google, Amazon, Intuit, Sun, Compaq, and Cimatech. And now, along with his new partner, former Vice President Al Gore, he's leading his firm's effort to invest $200 million in green tech. He provided critical backing for California's landmark clean energy bill. John's been a great friend of MIT, maybe because we have something in common. We both like to do experiments with a preference for the ones that combine great risk with magnificent purpose and possibility. Today, all of humanity is engaged in an unwitting experiment with the planet. At MIT, as we dive into the highly uncertain, deeply interesting challenge of energy and the environment, I know we're all eager for the chance to hear the perspective from one of the country's visionary thinkers and doers. Please join me in welcoming John Doerr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Susan, that's altogether too kind an introduction. It's the entrepreneurs who make all the difference in these companies. It's really great to be here at this amazing conference. I want to particularly thank James Schwartz, Susan Hockfield, Ernie Moniz, and a longtime friend of mine, Bob Metcalf, together with all of you who are, I think, the future for innovation in this incredibly important industry and problem. I'd also like to introduce to you three of my partners who've come here today. If you'd stand, David Wells and Wen Shea and Ellen Powell. They're all engineers from great universities, and we're here today to talk with you. So as soon as we get to the break, we'd like to do that. But I'd like this keynote to be more of a seminar than it is a speech, because I want to focus on the questions and topics that you have and treat this as your time. Now, before we came, we surveyed some of you, and you told us about some of the things you're interested in, like what it takes to make a great venture, or what's involved in a really successful venture capitalist. John Doerr, why are you interested in this field? What I'd like to do is put up on the screen and on my imaginary whiteboard some topics and questions from you. So the way we'll do this is if you put your hand in the air, we're going to get a microphone to you. And please tell me your name, just the question, not a speech, and we'll go there. So if you'd stand, please, we'll get you a mic right away. And we have half dozen great MIT engineers with microphones. and then the next person, a question, hand in the air, please. So we'll stage this like a pipeline.
Is mic on?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually emailed this question to you, so I appreciate this chance. I'm an inventor. I'm not going to promote my own inventions, but I see a problem. I see a problem. No, my question is, if somebody invents something, it takes about 2 years, if they're lucky, to get a patent. Is a venture capital firm willing to talk to somebody earlier to get the thing moving? Because 2 years out of the next 10 is a long time. By the time.
Great question. Got it. Another question here. Hands in the air. No one else. These guys at MIT are really smart. Yes, sir. Stand up, please. We'll get you a mic. Let's go.
Bilal. Hope you can hear me. Bilal Zuberi. The question is, energy here, we're talking about clean energy, and it seems like, we're trying to clean up a resource that we already have relatively plenty of. I come from a country, Pakistan, where energy is a basic need.
Yep.
So how do you talk about clean energy affordable there, where, this is just, to them this is a luxury?
Clean energy in the developing world is the topic. Another question. Yes, sir. Right there again. And then we'll go there.
Nuclear power.
Your name is?
My name is Andrew Cook. I'm with the Riva Corporation, and nuclear power is emerging as a viable alternative for low carbon dioxide emissions, especially here in the United States. We have several entrepreneurs who want to do project financing for multi-billion-dollar nuclear power plant projects, and I'd be interested in what the financial institutions are looking for in terms of stability and investment grade capability in order to support the startup of these independent power $3 or $4 billion projects.
How are we going to fund nuclear power? A couple more questions. Yes, ma'am. Over there, please. In there. Quick name, question.
Yes. My name is Beryl Hartman. I'm with E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs. And unlike other high-tech areas like the Internet and others, clean energy has policy barriers to overcome. And I would like to know what you think are the most important policy changes that would improve the environment for success and scalability.
Excellent question. How do we get the policy right? What's right?
Look at the flow of venture dollars over the last 2 years. They seem to be all concentrated on the supply side. Do you see any trends, momentums on the demand side to address energy productivity and energy efficiency?
Question. Great question. How about the low-hanging fruit of energy efficiency? Another question, please.
My question relates to the how venture capitalists look at green tech or clean tech versus, say, IT in terms of the development life cycle. Are you still looking for a 5-year return? Capital requirements are a little bit higher in the front running of the development cycle, and how does that differ from IT?
Great question. Over here, please.
My question is how venture capital firms compare investments that would produce a small incremental change but maybe low risk versus investments that have potential to change the world.
Okay. Incremental versus disruptive. Closest to the mic right here, please. Name again first. Thank you. And then we'll go there.
A fascinating discussion you gave at TED concerning a question you were given by your 15-year-old daughter at dinner. And I was wondering what progress you'd made in answering her question.
That's great. I want to talk about that. Yeah.
My name is Kamal Meetal from New Delhi. If you were the president of the U.S., what would you do to mitigate global warming issues?
We better stop soon. 2 more questions and we're done.
My name is Henry Daher. The high oil prices is pushing now a lot of research and development of clean energy technology. What happened if the oil prices was not continue to be sustainable, started to go down? How do you see this research and development going?
Great.
Thank you.
Very good question. And let's take one more. Can we run right up here? Thank you. We'll do a little bit of this at the end of some comments I have to address these and other topics.
Hi, my name is Marco. Large scale as coordination on small scale solutions rather than a big winner.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Your comments on that. Well, in a new venture, dominated energy landscape, small scale solution, and concentrating on coordinating this rather than a big winner that scale up to capacity.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me take one of these right at the start, and that was to compare green tech investing with, Bob, maybe information technology investing. And I like to compare, just as examples that aren't typical, Google with Bloom Energy. So the Google company required $25 million of venture capital, private money, to get to profitability, positive cash flow, and stability. And it took 5 years from when it was first funded in '99 till it was able to go public, till it was really very fairly successful. Bloom, by contrast, took $250 million, 10 times more capital. And we've been working on Bloom for 7 years now. I think it will take 9 years until it's clearly profitable and at scale. Both of these rely on intellectual property and lots of smart people. The markets for the internet ventures generally are measured in the billions. I believe the markets for the green tech ventures are larger by maybe an order of magnitude, the tens of billions or even more. Energy, after all, worldwide is a $6 trillion business, counting all the uses of it. So shorter time, smaller amount of money, smaller markets. We think the returns, the rates of return in green tech investing and company building are very comparable. I do, before I get into green tech, want to say two things about Kleiner Perkins, if I may. The first is that there's more going on at our venture capital partnership and America's venture partnerships than green. For a long time, we've been working in the information technologies and the life sciences. So whether it's new immersive ways to get through the web or ways to get broadband access to mobile devices, whether it's the innovations, the amazing progress in biology and in cancer work, personalized medicine, the science hasn't slowed down because we're in a recession. And I think the innovation of America's entrepreneurs holds great hope for all of us. But I think it's super smart that this conference has been keyed off the theme of scale. And if I may say so, I would add speed to that. Speed and scale, scale and speed. The question up there is, John, why did you personally get involved in this? And I want to tell you, those two priorities of speed and scale really hit home for me, literally, one evening after we saw Al Gore's movie with friends, Kathy and Walter Isaacson. We went round the table and said, so what do you all think about global warming? And everyone concurred, with one exception, that it's a serious problem. When the conversation came to my 11-year-old daughter, Esther, it's really interesting what she had to say. Quietly but apprehensively, she asked, Dad, is global warming going to hit before I'm out of high school? And then we got to Mary, my teenage daughter, and she said, Dad, I am scared and angry about this. Your generation created the problem. You better fix it. And all the conversation stopped. I had no idea what to say about it. But Esther was telling us about the speed of the problem. And Mary was scared about the scale of the mess that we've created. They want us to act now at speed and with scale. So how do we get here? What's really going on? What is happening? Well, our friend Tom Friedman says the world is flat and crowded and hot. This world is flat. There's more than 2 billion people coming onto the world's economic stage. They all want the same thing, right? Clean water, clean power, clean transportation, and better lives for their kids. If our world allows, if the developing world industrializes the same way we did in the Western world, as Susan said, we're going to pollute, poison, choke our precious planet to death. The world's crowded. The national academies agree that the largest single trend on the planet is urbanization. In fact, they forecast that over the next 50 years, we're going to triple from 2 billion to 6 billion the number of people that are living in megacities of more than 10 million. By 2050, that's the equivalent of 400 new megacities. Or to bring it home, creating every year 8 new Manhattans. That's crowded. And yes, the world's hot. As Al Gore has warned us, we're experiencing and forecasting unprecedented rises in CO2 levels and global temperatures. We learned just last year that it's quite possible that in less than 10 years, we will lose the Arctic ice cap. It will completely melt away during the summers. Lose it. And that forecast has been coming in year after year. It's a flat, crowded, and hot world that's getting hotter. How are we going to stop this? Well, the science tells us that a 2 degrees Celsius rise in global warming is as far as we dare go. More than that raises the odds to over 50-50 that we'll suffer irreversible, catastrophic climate change. And it tells us to stop there. We've got to have greenhouse gas concentrations below 450 parts per million. That means we have got to stop dumping 70 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every day as if it's some kind of free open sewer. How are we going to do that? The science tells us we've got to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the globe by more than 50%. And do it by 2030. And it tells us further that if we're going to do that, we've got to reduce them in the developed world by 90%, a 90% reduction. How are we going to do that at scale? Well, there's no silver bullet. We've got several big bullets, and my partners and I believe that one of those is innovation. This is the one commercial I'm going to run about Kleiner Perkins, what we do. We're a venture capital partnership. We invest in risky plans from unproven entrepreneurs who would never qualify for a subprime loan. So I like to think of us as tech-crazy lenders. We get our funds from great universities like MIT and then help these entrepreneurs. They do the work, build really important businesses, recruit outstanding teams, and create a lot of jobs. In our case, over 400,000 jobs. And I'm proud that for MIT has given us $50 million of their funding to invest. And we've given them back over $500 million, which is enough to fund 150 professorships or to pay full tuition for 4 years for every MIT student. Yeah, we like that? Bob and Susan are talking to each other right now. How's this happen? It's not because we're so smart. It's because we've seen two really powerful waves of innovation, two tsunamis, one in the information technologies, the bugs and drugs, the biotechnologies, and then in the world of bits and bytes. Alan Kay, who again worked with Bob Metcalfe at Xerox PARC, is famous for saying the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And we say at Kleiner Perkins, the second best way is to fund it. So my partner Bill Joy has taken it one step further. He's fond of saying, to fund the future, you've got to go out and find it. If you don't go, you don't know. So for this field of green technologies, we're taking a very systematic approach to finding the best green innovation. We start with a map of the U.S. energy flows. This may be familiar to you. On the left are the sources, on the right are the uses of energy. Sources being the dirty fossil fuels, green renewables, and the big sources being uses being residential, industrial, and transport. I got three big observations about this. The first being that the renewable energies are less than 5% of our energy sources today. The second is that more than 55% of the energy for electricity is wasted in heat or in transmission. And the third is the bottom line, and that is that solving this global warming problem is all about three areas. Those are coals and cars and conservation, the three C's. Now, finding these solutions is good, clean, hard work. In the past couple of years, this has been a priority at our shop. We've reviewed over 1,500 plans, met with 150 entrepreneurs, visited almost 50 different labs, universities, held 3 global convenings of the world's thought leaders from academia, the world of entrepreneurs and businesses, policy. And we've developed a dozen grand challenges that really call for radical disruption. More about those in a moment. But we have invested $250 million in over 30 green tech ventures. And we're not through funding those, and we're not through sponsoring new ones yet. I want to tell you 5 really short stories about them. Cars. The first story is about cars, about Fisker Automotive. Now, take a look at this sexy photograph. The Fisker Karma is going to be the first volume plug-in hybrid production vehicle in the world, in volume production next year, with the practicality of a 4-seater and the no-compromise performance of a sports sedan. Now, this is founded and run not by some Silicon Valley techie, but by Henry Fisker, who's the designer of the Aston Martin DB9 and the BMW Z8. This vehicle will get over 100 miles per gallon, and if you drive less than 50 miles a day, because it's a serial hybrid, you never have to go to the gas station. But clean cars is about more than clean vehicles. It's also about clean fuels. And we've invested in 6 renewable fuel ventures. I want to tell you about Amorous Biofuels, which has been founded by 3 30-year-old scientists out of UC Berkeley, who, with $15 million from the Gates Foundation, started out to use synthetic biology to synthesize the key compound in anti-malarial drugs. It's artemisinin. And they are ahead of schedule, on budget, to lower the cost of that key compound from $2 to 20 cents a dose. An order of magnitude reduction in those costs is estimated to save 1 million lives a year. 1 million lives a year. If I could be part of the team that do that, I would retire. I think this is incredibly important work. But more than that, they're going to take that same technology and apply it to creating green and better biofuels, biogasoline, biojet A, and most exciting to me, biodiesel, because theirs will be the first diesel that can be synthesized from sugar. Synthetic biology for fuels is a really big deal because, as you know, you can precisely engineer all the molecules of the fuel chain. You can change the vapor pressure, the octane, combustion parameters. Better biofuels is one of those big bullets. The third story I'd like to tell you about deals with coal-powered electricity, which, as the MIT report tells us, is the dirtiest electricity of all and the largest, gnarliest problem. We've invested in 11 ventures that are alternatives to coal-fired electricity, from thermoelectrics to geothermal. One I want to describe to you is a solar startup called Mia Soleil. What's interesting about them is they are second-generation solar, SIGS technology, and SIGS on flexible substrates. In fact, very, very large sheets of stainless steel roll at about a foot per second through 14 different vacuum deposition stages. And out the other end, you get solar cells, which are flexible and cost about 12 cents a kilowatt hour, with less than $1 per watt peak cost in manufacturing. That's, of course, half the price of crystalline silicon. And I think the first in the wave of thin-film solar ventures that we'll see. My last tech story is about conservation. We've invested in a half dozen or so projects there. But this one really caught my fancy because there's no proprietary technology. Its name's RecycleBank. It's in New York. And they use the internet and RFID to tag waste bins and encourage residents to increase recycling. Recycling is a huge cost to a city. Landfills are scarce. They're a big component of the budgets. And they've proven in 30 communities now they can raise recycling rates by 50%. When you recycle, the amount you put in is measured, it's put on the internet. You receive points as a resident in a community for your gains in recycling. The bottom line of all this is that when RecycleBank gets to 10 million households, and they've signed the city of Atlanta and the city of Chicago, they're going to be saving 4 million tons of greenhouse gases per year, $2 billion in landfill disposal fees, and they'll pump $200 million in the form of these points, say for Starbucks, back into local communities. So cars, coal, conservation. Radical innovation is clearly important, but it's not going to be enough to improve the light bulbs and change them. We're also going to have to change the laws. And so my last vignette here is a story about policy. In August of 2006, there were a half dozen techie entrepreneurs that went to Sacramento, California to lobby in favor of the California Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006. And simply put, that legislation mandated a 25% reduction in greenhouse gases in the seventh largest economy in the world by 2020. It was a close call. The business interests, steel, cement, the automobile industry said, we don't want that. It'll cost us jobs. We went there and said, you know, it's not quite so clear. The business community is divided. There's a lot of us who think this will create new jobs and strengthen the economy. In fact, our survey showed it would create over 80,000 jobs, add $4 billion to the economy's income, and reduce 174 million tons of greenhouse gases per year. So this bill passed, but narrowly, 47 to 32. Sounds like a pretty good start, right? But California is only 1.5% of the world's greenhouse gases. So a 25% reduction on 1.5 is pretty clearly not going to be enough. One of the questions on the board was, what do we do nationally? We clearly need a national cap and trade system on greenhouse gases. I think we'll get one in the next couple of years. I'm an advocate of more. I believe we should also have a revenue neutral to the taxpayer carbon tax, offsetting those taxes against employment taxes. I believe it's very important that we get at the state level the utility regulations right, to decouple a utility's profits from the number of electrons that they serve. About 10 states have that kind of decoupling. There's another 20 really of size where getting the utility rules right are really important. They have 100% market share. They have massive capital flows, low-cost capital. They're governed by maybe 3 or 4 or 5 member utility boards. We need more investment from venture capital in green, even though last year it was $4 billion. We need more universities to play key roles. And MIT's leading the way. This Energy Club, Ernie's initiative, they're incredibly impressive. We need R&D that's scaled to the enormous size of this problem. Do you know Exxon's revenues last year were $1.1 billion a day? What do you think the total U.S. R&D investment last year in renewable energy was? Less than $1 billion, less than one day of Exxon's revenues. You know, from one of the reports here at MIT, there's enough energy and hot rocks under the surface of the Earth to heat, to provide America's energy needs for 1,000 years. You know what the federal investment in geothermal research was last year? $5 million. These numbers are so low, they're almost criminal. They're certainly not enough. So what's happened in the couple of years since my daughter yelled at me? We've invested a lot, we've lobbied a lot, and I've learned a lot. I mean, think about it. Who would have thought that the designer of a gas-guzzling vehicle would make a 100-mile-per-gallon plug-in hybrid vehicle? Who would have thought that scientists trying to cure malaria would make better biofuels? Who would have thought that you could have flexible solar cells integrated in the surface of buildings? Who would have thought that RFID would get people to recycle more? Who would have thought that going green in California would mean billions in state income and lots of jobs? And to the point of scale, who would have thought that all of that is not going to be enough? To get solutions at scale, we're going to have to find answers that are economic for all people everywhere. We've got to use policy to harness innovation, to make sure that the right thing to do is a profitable thing to do, so it becomes the probable thing to have happen. There's more money that flows through markets in a day than all the world's governments in a year. So we've got to tap America's capital, the world's capital markets, if we're going to solve this problem at scale. Energy is a $6 trillion business worldwide. I like to say it's the mother of all markets. Compared to that internet, which is a big deal, this is much bigger, much more exciting. The challenge, though, is even larger. Going green, solving that problem, is going to be the largest transformation we've seen on the planet, at least since it went anaerobic, from methane to oxygen. Thank you. Come on, everybody. Let's wake up. What's the planetary call to action? Some say we need an Apollo project. We need a Manhattan project. And we need both those and more. I want to tell you they failed miserably to convey the size of this challenge because those were merely multi-billion-dollar programs in single agencies of a single country. This is nothing less than reindustrializing every city, every town, every country on the planet. We've got to replace the capital equipment. I'm going to tell you about 3 of our grand challenges to give you a sense of where we're trying to go. And I hope they'll appeal to you, or there'll be some others. In solar cells, we're trying to find breakthrough solar cell technology that can approach or exceed 31% Shockley quasar single junction efficiency limit. And to do that at 50 cents a watt at scale. In wind, we're looking for breakthrough wind technologies with efficiencies that approach the 59% BETS limit, again at less than 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And in carbon capture and sequestration, we've backed one, and we're looking for more ventures with innovative material processes that will use CO2 to make valuable products instead of sequestering it underground. Let's work on those together. Or if you don't like those, propose another one to us. Or if you don't like those, please join a venture that we're already backing There's 30 of them, a half dozen in the area. Let's build those together. And if you love MIT like we do, please work with a venture capital firm like Polaris, like Kleiner, that's working for MIT. Now, David Wells and Wen Shea and Ellen Power are all here today to talk to us about this. I can't wait to see what you do about the crisis, because I really do want to have a different kind of conversation with Mary and with Esther in another 10 years when I'm back here. Could we get a couple more questions up on the board? Thank you. Let's get a couple more questions on the board and then blow our way through them. We've got about 10 minutes to do that, I believe. So, name, question?
Jan Olav Willems from Norway.
Hi, Jan.
Hi. You said this is a global challenge. How can you encourage more innovation and financing in other countries? And how can you get other countries to support venture capital more?
Okay. How encourage international investment? More questions, please? Jan, by the way, is building Think vehicles. It's a very impressive effort. Question here in the center.
Hi, Bruce Stram with Element Markets. Some of us might remember in the 70s and 80s we had kind of a bubble in energy technology, a bubble that collapsed. How do you think about that as a business risk associated with this increase in activity?
Okay. The risk of another bubble or boom. One or two more questions? Yes, sir. If you just talk loudly that way, we'll hear it.
The question is, this country always responds to challenges. And it's a mystery to me that people like President Bush or many of the leaders here don't tell people, listen, you can save a lot of energy by, turning off the lights or doing some of the public places that you see that are full of light at night. If you turn that down, I'm sure that without affecting or impacting the standard of living in the United States, you would save 10% very easily. And I don't understand why people don't go out there and request that. It's a very easy thing to do, I think.
So here's the question of where are the leaders, or
Right.
how do we change consumer behavior? Maybe both. One more question.
How do you make it profitable to stop cutting down tropical rainforests, the deforestation, which is 20% of world greenhouse gas emissions, or to reinvent agriculture, which might be 15 to 20%?
That's a really good question. I think I'd like to go directly to it with the answer that I don't know. And all the experts in the field that I know don't know, more importantly. If we're going to solve this problem, we need we need to first stop losing. And then we need a comprehensive plan, region by region, sector by sector, policy by policy in the areas of the world that matter. And they don't all matter. There's 5 regions. There are 5 sectors. And then within each of those venues and policies, there's a few key things to do. The plan that I've seen that's most impressive is a $600 million a year effort, an open source effort sponsored by the Packard Foundation. They've committed $100 million a year for 6 years. The Hewlett Foundations, I should say, the Packard one is going to join them. Hal Harvey heads this. It's called Design to Win, and I think it's worth learning a lot more about. How early will a venture capitalist engage with a green tech entrepreneur? Well, just last night we signed a term sheet with an entrepreneur who doesn't have patents, has applied for them, so his intellectual property position is secure. And I see this commonplace, so I don't think that's a difficulty in getting to market quickly. How do I think about clean energy in the developing world? I think it's different than it is here. For example, solar in India or in Africa isn't an alternative, it's a necessity. That's the only way to get the solutions. So I do believe the energy needs and sources, food, biofuels, all these are very different and very regional. There was a question here about financing nuclear power plants. I'm going to pass on that because I see Jim Rogers here, and you're building one, aren't you? Exactly. So we can hear directly from the man on that. Key energy productivity and efficiency trends. The biggest lever here seems to be building standards. And our experience in California putting in place tight standards was that we've been able to decrease the energy consumption per capita and certainly per unit of economic development. Getting good, tough standards in place needs to happen together with utility regulations, together with cap and trade, together with investment in R&D, together with incentives, tax credits for production, for research. Same story in policy as there is in technology. No single silver bullet will address this problem. How about the President of the United States? What would you do if you were President of the United States on climate crisis? God knows. None of us are qualified to hold that position. But I'll offer the view as a voter that I think any of the current candidates are going to face into and address this issue more aggressively than the current administration has. All three have climate policies, carbon policies. All three of their platforms don't meet my minimum standard of what we need to do to really solve this problem. But these candidates are not stupid. They are very, very smart. If you look at the spectrum, what I see is that the investors are ahead of the businesses are ahead of the voters, and the voters are ahead of the political leaders. And if we go back to the voters, when you poll American citizens, they don't think the way we do here and on the West Coast. Where I grew up in Missouri, they either don't know about global warming, or if they do, it's not urgent. It's not a top priority question. There was a survey published that looked at all the questions asked of the presidential candidates in the last year, in the debates and on the Sunday morning television shows. 1,000 questions in total. Do you know how many there were on global warming? 2. Do you know how many there were on UFOs? 2. So here's the theory of change. We've got to move mainstream American public opinion and reduce this partisan gap between Democrats and Republicans so we're more like Europe, where both parties agree we got to be green in Europe. It's just a question of how much and how. We've got to make this thing urgent, make it a priority. And that's why I'm so excited about what Al Gore is doing next. I'm excited about his joining Kleiner, but he's launched this Alliance for Climate Protection. Go to the website wecansolveit.org. It's a $300 million, $100 million a year scientifically targeted communications campaign to move mainstream public opinion through television, through the internet, through grassroots, through boys clubs, through girls clubs. The first spot I was going to run it's Nancy Pelosi and Newt Gingrich saying the one thing we agree on is this problem. I certainly hope that campaign succeeds because political will is a nonlinear system, and Al believes it's at a tipping point. We get that done, everything else we're trying to do is going to be much easier. Is this a green tech bubble? Overall, no, I don't think so. I think what we're at the beginning of is a green tech boom, and I think booms are really important. We saw a boom in railroads in America. There was an internet boom. Booms create full employment. They create a lot of jobs. They get a lot of investment, sometimes overinvestment. I can assure you we do not have overinvestment against the scale of this problem, the scale of this challenge. I believe I have about 5 more minutes. Is that right? Yeah? Let's take some more questions. Yes, sir.
I don't know if everybody can hear me, but
You're great.
you've made 2 comments about using green tech to produce more electricity, and then end use, which is consuming electricity as a substitute, for example, oil. Case in point is electrified car.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you'd care to comment about actually increasing electric power production and consumption as a substitute for getting off carbon dioxide emitters, which seems to be the point that you're actually making, which is using fungible energy supply sources like solar power, nuclear power, geothermal power, wind power, to produce electricity which can be used in fungible manners, for example, transportation, to get us off the carbon dioxide emitting habit, particularly oil.
So let's throw that out there. Comment on electrification. If you're okay, I'd like to get at least 2 or 3 more questions up. Anyone else with a question or comment or topic? Yes, sir. Stand up and just yell it out.
It seems to me that there'll be a lot of progress in reduce Western greenhouse emissions by 9%. Imagine that the world population is 10 times as big. Now it's 900%. So a lot of the effort is focused on technology versus population issues, which is a political hot potato. Any comments on that?
Okay, so population growth, hot potato, 900%. Name?
Going back to the policy issues, and there's a lot of ebb and flow from year to year as far as the policy supports for green tech, and how as venture capitalists do you deal with those changes?
Venture capitalists, policy randomness. Question over here, sir. Name, please.
Manuel Navia, Oxford Bioscience Partners. How do you get investments to deal in the retail level so that I, as a homeowner, get products that would encourage me without spending vast amounts of money to actually reduce my consumption?
Okay, what are we going to do at the consumer level? How change consumer behavior? I would love to keep going. I'm afraid. Oh, we have 10 minutes, and we can do a couple more questions. Please, over there. And then we'll go over here.
Hello. Ron Todd. My company's Terawatt Solutions. My question has to do with financing of new ventures. Venture capital companies and their funds have been set up to deal with returns on a relatively short-term basis. However, we're now selling into a relatively conservative industry, and we're trying to do things at a very large scale. And so the returns are not going to be in the time frame that this mechanism for starting companies is set up to support. So my question is, do you see the venture capital industry evolving so that you can support startups that have a much longer time to a liquidity event than you're accustomed to currently?
That's a great question. I think I'd like to step right into that one, make some more comments about venture capital, and see if we can get to the remaining questions. I don't see the venture capital industry evolving. In fact, I think the prospects for returns on venture capital going forward are going to be worse than they've been in the past. The returns overall for the industry have not been good, and for some reason there continues to flood money into the industry. There's too much money, I think, chasing too few really well-constructed ventures despite the great size of this marketplace. Having said that, I don't think venture capitalists' tolerance for long-term is going to change. I do think they're quite long-term investors, and I don't think they'll have any difficulty investing in the green technologies. We've seen venture capital investing double in just a couple of years. Now, it's still bigger in the life sciences and in the information technology, but I think we'll see venture capital respond to the size of this opportunity, particularly as there are very large, visible, new venture-backed public companies, and I think we'll see a lot of those in 2009. I would like to speak to one of the questions that you asked me about in the survey. I prepared some remarks about just a couple of points about what makes for a really great venture. And we sat down and looked through the projects we were involved with over the last couple of decades and found these key success factors. The first is that the ventures have really A-plus leadership with passionate founders. The second, that they're committed to technical excellence, because that's such a powerful thing in attracting great talent into it. The third is that you go after a large market. That's certainly possible in green, although you can get lost as a dilettante, as Susan said, in a smaller market. A fourth one is that you have reasonable financings, because you're going to need a lot of money generally to be in these fields. One thing that distinguishes the really great ventures from the not so great ones is their sense of urgency. It couples well with this notion that we need to try to solve the problem with speed and scale. And finally, there's a cultural element in the really great ventures that I'd like to be sure to speak to. And it's whether or not there's a culture in the enterprise of being missionaries or mercenaries. And I draw those two extremes. They're overdrawn. But I want to make a point here. The mercenary organizations have lots of drive. They're paranoid. As Andy Grove says, only the paranoid survive. The founders in those, the management, the teams are quite opportunistic, and they're always interested in the pitch and in the deal. They're sprinting really for a short run. As contrasted with the missionaries who are moved by passion. They're strategic. They're focused on really big ideas and partnerships. In these mercenary cultures, you obsess on the competition instead of on the customer. The mercenaries build a kind of aristocracy of the founders instead of a meritocracy. It's the difference between focusing on financial statements or value statements. It's an attitude of entitlement versus contribution. Or as someone said, my partner Randy Komisar, the difference between having a deferred life plan or a whole life that really works. Yeah, everybody wants to make money. In the mercenary organizations, they lust for money and no more. In your missionary green effort, you're going to be lusting to make meaning as well as money. Or, as they say at the Aspen Institute, it's the opportunity to be successful and significant that brings the best out of us. And I think that's quite true of this field of green. I think we're at the limit of our time. I would love to follow up with you on more of these questions. And I just want to say again, I think it's an extraordinary privilege for me and my partners to be here, to work with other venture capitalists, to work with you, to do our small part to innovate at speed and at scale. Thank you.